Welcome back. Today we're going to talk about mind reading. Oh my goodness, what a side path, right? So one of my students called me up and he said, Forrest, I'm starting to get one of those powers and I'm hearing other people's thoughts. I'm reading their mind. What should I do? Should I stay away from it somehow? Should I stop it? I don't want it to interfere with my meditative practice and my goal of getting deep into samadhi, into the absorption and samadhi state. What should I do about this? Let's get into it. So, what is the basis of yoga? What is the basis of meditation? What is it that we're trying to accomplish? The thing that we're trying to do is be still and know. We're following that rule. We're entering into a low idle state. That's the whole purpose of yoga. So we quiet the body, which in turn quiets the mind. And when your mind is more calm and relaxed, you will automatically reflect more of what's going on around you. So instead of constantly projecting your own stuff out onto other people and your own thoughts and your own desires and your own projections, all of a sudden you'll be more and more in receptive mode where I take in everything that's going on around me much more fully than I used to. Wow, then you go to a sunset, you go to a sunrise, you go to the ocean, and it's so overwhelming because you're really taking it in. And not just for a second, you're taking it in for some time. And that's really a huge sign of improvement. You watch a movie and all of a sudden somebody does something and it just breaks your heart. You start crying like crazy because you're more sensitive. You're taking more in. And so it's very, very natural. And so when that happens, when you're more quiet, when your mind is more quiet and you're less in projection constantly, well, then you will recognize what other people are thinking much more clearly. So if you come up to somebody and you notice that they're kind of, well, you know that they're in a sad state already. And if you come up to somebody and you notice that, well, my goodness, they might be frustrated, right? And so that's the essence of it. That's really what's happening. You're just noticing like you hadn't noticed before. And this gets into what the early hypnotherapists and the early hypnotists that would perform on stage, they would notice these things and they developed a whole science that they called cold reading. So you can look it up. You can look up on Amazon. You can find some very old books on cold reading. It's very fascinating. And that's how they dissected this process that they were able to pick up on the thoughts of others. And it all happens within the face, within the ventral vagal nerve. All of what we feel and what we think comes up in the face. And so there are all these little clues that happen in the face and in the body that will tell you what somebody is thinking. For example, if your friend goes, well, you know he might be saying an ah sound. And so you might connect that he's going to say, after lunch, we should go out. And so before he even says it, you're already hearing what he might be saying. And maybe you won't be 1,000% correct, but maybe you'll be 80% correct or 90% correct or 50% correct. And you'll get some of his thought before he even says it. And that's the whole basis of cold reading. So if you see somebody go, well, you know they might be saying, what are we talking about? What is going on? You already know there's a what in there because you're looking at their face, you're feeling what they're feeling, you're noting their expression, you're paying attention, you're not projected with your own stuff, and so you're seeing more clearly what's going on with them. And you go, oh, I know what I think I know what he's going to say. And that's the whole basis of cold reading. And so they developed this whole science of it, and they would practice it, and they would get very, very good at it. And so they would take all these micro clues that are not even fully conscious. They're down in the subconscious, right? So they would take all these little clues and they would start to develop this ability to read what somebody's going to say. And once you can see it in somebody's face, you can hear it in their voice as well. So you'll be on the phone and you'll know what somebody's about to say. Or you'll get a feeling. I think I know what they're going to say, or I think I know what they're feeling. So that's the essence of cold reading. And that's how it usually happens in an interaction between people. And we can explain it through these subconscious cues that go through the face. And so there's all kinds of information in the face: the tone of the skin, the color of the skin, the coloring of the body, the position of the shoulders, the movement of the chin, the movement of the ears. All of these little signals that run through the face and the body are giving you tons and tons of information, which a cold reader will then begin to practice interpreting, and he will start reading minds. He's not really reading minds, though. He's reading people. He's getting his own projections out of the way momentarily so that he can actually hear. So my student was wondering, do I have to stop this? Well, you really can't. How are you going to shut off the whole process of meditation, of paying more attention? You can't shut that off. You're going to get these impressions no matter what. Now, will you turn it into your whole life and study cold reading every day for 20 years? Will that become your life? Well, of course, that's a side path. And that's not going to lead you towards your goal of going into the right brain, going into samadhi, going into absorption. That's not going to lead you down the correct path, right? So that's how you get mixed up in a side path, and it eats up your time, which is very, very valuable, isn't it? So that would be the misstep in it. But just having the awareness and hearing somebody's thoughts before it happens is completely natural. And it means that you're getting out of the way. So there's actually less of your ego that's happening, not more. It means that you are actually listening to the person for the very first time. And so once we explain all of the physical cues and the auditory cues, well, then it gets a little deeper into the science. We live in a magnetic soup. And Michael Pessinger and Todd Murphy have pointed out that brain activity will pass through magnetic waves. And that's how one part of your brain talks to another part of your brain, talks to your body like that, simultaneously, almost just like, just that fast. It's just really, really fast. And to enable that kind of connectivity through the brain and through the body, you have to have this ability to speak through magnetic waves. And so if you have magnetic waves and it's going on in your body, and it's obviously going to affect those around you. And that's how we can pick up on the thoughts of other people, no matter how far that they're away, because they're all in the soup of the Earth's magnetic resonance. Unless you think it's not possible, Michael Pessinger ran experiments and he found that a magnetic wave would influence the brain. So he proved it. He proved that it absolutely would influence cognitive activity. And if it influences a little bit, that means it's possible. And we could extrapolate that to mean that information actually runs through magnetic resonance. And the old yogis call it the heliosphere. Emerson called it the oversoul. All the same thing. We're talking about this huge thing, and all of us are connected to it, this huge consciousness. And so you're going to pick up on some of that as well. And so you won't see anything, you won't hear anything, but you'll just know. And how do you explain that? Well, it happens through that magnetic resonance, through the connection that is between all of us. So I had the question, how do I develop telepathy? Now again, that can turn into a side path, but if you're running a tiny little experiment, you want to kind of understand how these things work, well, that's fine. Run a tiny little experiment, but just don't turn it into your whole life, all right? Because that, of course, is a side path. But if you want to develop telepathy, then you need to sit down with one person that you are very, very close with. somebody that you can actually open up and tell them everything that's inside of you. You're not afraid to share anything with this person, because it's that kind of deep resonance between the two of you that has to enable the telepathy. So the first thing you can do between the two of you is one person will put out their hand and close his eyes, and the other person will draw a symbol with their finger. Okay? And then he will try and guess what the symbol is. Now, don't draw it on the hand. You have to draw it, using your mind. Imagine that you are drawing a triangle or drawing a circle or drawing a square. Nothing complicated. It has to be very, very simple. And the other person will try and guess. Then you go back and forth and back and forth. Make it fun. Make it a game. And next, take your hands down and just imagine that you are sending the shape. And then after you've played with shapes, you send those back and forth, right? And maybe you win, maybe you don't. You don't care. It's just for fun. And then after you've done that, you can send one word, a very simple word, like tree. Just send one word, okay? One image. Send the image, send the word, one thing, and see if the other person picks it up. And then you do that from farther and farther distances, so you get over the idea that they're happening only right in front of you. Maybe you're over the phone and you send one picture, one simple image, a tree, a bathtub, anything very, very simple, and maybe make it from one list so he doesn't have to search his brain too far to figure out what it might be. And you do that back and forth. And then you practice sending more and more sophisticated ideas. Not quite as simple, but just a little less simple. Not too complicated, just a little bit less simple. And send that back and forth. And that's how you would develop telepathy with one person. And then if you could do it with one person, you could do it with other people. But it has to be somebody that you're very close with. And if you're very close with somebody and you picked you might have went to your phone and you knew somebody was going to call you right before they called you. Same thing. You're picking up their thought before it happens. One of the suggestions that Todd Murphy has in one of his books is he mentions if you're going to send a thought to somebody else, say it with their voice. So it's like they're saying it to themselves, right? And that's an easier voice for them to hear. So you imagine that you are saying it with their voice inside of their head, and it will be easier for them to pick up the thought. So that's a fun experiment. Like I said, don't make it your whole life, because then you'll miss the whole point. The basis for all of this is just the low idle state, the low body idle state, which reflects back on the mind, clears the mind. When you come out of meditation, you go, oh my God, I'm so clear. Oh, that was a wonderful, deep meditation, wasn't it? That's your proof. You had a wonderful, deep meditation, and it just cleared all the projections from you. And so it's just you. It's just that pure awareness that's sitting there for just a moment. And maybe it's not perfect, but it's much deeper than it was. And that's huge, isn't it? That's so huge. So that low idle state is the basis for all of that. So I hope you loved this. If you did, be sure to hit that bell down below so I can see all of you next time.